Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. My sister and I live in a two-person apartment in the center of the city, where we both attend university and tend to our full-time jobs so we can pay for our tuition and live the life we've always wanted to build with one another. I wouldn't really say that my life leading up to the point where my sister and I decided to leave home and chase a life for ourselves was easy. Our lives have never been something that one could call easy. We've always struggled with our upbringing and the nature of the parents who got the opportunity to raise us. Both my mom and dad never really wanted to have kids in a sense, or at least that's what I've always felt and assumed of them. The way they treated and handled us never really insinuated any form of love. They were never the kind of parents that would surprise you with gifts and take you to places or come hug you in the middle of the night or check on you to make sure you're all right. They just made sure you had food and water and that you were alive and sound, and that was that. They didn't provide any luxuries or extra services that we asked for. It was as if our existence was transactional in their life. We did things they asked us to do, helped them with chores at home, ensured we ate food and had a roof to sleep under at night. It was a transactional relationship. Nothing more, nothing less to it. I remember when my mother decided to pack her things and leave us all behind. My sister was barely able to walk at that time. I can describe to you the confusion I felt when I knew that even the bare minimum I once had would no longer be mine. That I no longer would have a mother to call a mom, and that I would be the person who would always be referred to as the motherless, or are orphans in a sense, or even the abandoned. And to be quite honest, although it was something that I didn't quite understand at the time, I can look back at it now and see how my mother's abandonment led to me building a personality and traits of my own that I would have never been able to accumulate had I grown up in the same routinish, boring, transactional, and insignificant lifestyle. I can safely say that there were so many times throughout my teenagehood and my coming of age that I wished I had a motherly figure or a feminine role model in my life to guide me towards the person that I've always wanted to be. And I just think that journey could have been made so much less complicated and full of suffering had there been someone to guide me. And that's the only thing I've always resented my mother for. The person I want to become is a person who could have flown more easily into me had my mother been there. Nevertheless, I found my ways of dealing with it and coping with her absence, and I never really reached out or tried to seek her as I didn't feel any critical urgent need to do so. And quite honestly, I would have lived the rest of my life without seeking or attempting to reach out to her or any sort of motherly figure in my life. I'd made peace with the version of my life that I'd been granted since birth. Of course, until my mother contacted me a couple of days ago. She called me on my phone number, and I wouldn't ever have recognized her voice. She had grown into somewhat of an absolute stranger in that way. She called me and told me that there was something that she wasn't able to say to me 19 years ago when she left. Something she thought I was too young to understand, and something that she kept for what she supposed would be the best. Although she did kind of say she forgot to say it before she went on a rant explaining to me that had she told me then, my life would have crumbled. I would have lived my life resenting and hating the world around me. After giving someone such descriptions of something so secretive, you would think she would tell me the entire truth. She would provide them with information to release me from the anxiety I've lived with my whole life. Still, you would be wrong because she told me that she wouldn't tell me what she was hiding from me. She said that she would be meeting me in a few days, come into my work and telling me what she had kept from me all those years ago. I can't really know if I want to accept her back into my life with open arms and listen to what she has to say. I don't even know if I want to believe what she's going to tell me. Actually, I've been getting this frantic fantasy of just quitting my job and avoiding seeing my mother at all costs. Quite honestly, the idea is becoming more and more attractive to me. The more time I spend writing this, it's just so confusing how a person will just abandon their own child and come back 19 years to tell them that they have been keeping a dangerous secret from them, which is the reason that they had left them, and then just leave them on a cliffhanger without telling them what it is, and just not even setting a date as to when they would be telling them the rest of the story. Update: I still ended up attending. I ended up still tending to my job as if my mother hadn't threatened to crush my world with a secret she'd been keeping from me at my workplace. As a woman of her word, she showed up yesterday morning, looking absolutely different from what I remembered her to be. Her health seemed to be in a lot better shape. She seemed to hold a smile that was a lot less burdened by life's miseries and agonies. For a moment, if I didn't know she was about to destroy my world as she had promised, I would have been glad to see her doing so well and seeming so happy. We chatted about for a moment or two as my anxiety crept in before she blurted out the words she'd been dreading for 19 years or so. She told me that the day she gave birth to a child on my birthday 27 years ago, there were so many complications and health problems with the child that was born that day. There were problems during pregnancy, and those problems transferred themselves into the baby's well-being. That day at the hospital, my mom and dad made the cruel decision to exchange their sick child with someone else's. A child that was indeed healthy, a child that was indeed me. She told me that she never got over the guilt of taking away someone else's child and replacing their healthy one with one that was doomed to die. She could never live with the responsibility of raising a child so lovingly, knowing that it would never belong to her, knowing that there was another pair of parents who had to suffer the lack of well-being of the child they believed to be theirs, and possibly even suffer through the death or the disability as consequences of something that they never did. My mother confessed to me that that child's health was so corrupt because when she was pregnant with the child, she never quit smoking or drinking. That must have translated itself into the health problems with the baby that she birthed. Other genetic elements played a role in the baby's sickness. Still, it was mostly my parents' fault to begin with. My mother and her husband, or my dad, or I don't even know what to call them anymore, promised each other that whenever I would be grown enough to know it, that they would tell me the truth. Still, she slowly realized that my dad never agreed to it. They had a massive argument about it, which led to her leaving us behind. That was why she left her children, one that she had actually birthed, and a child she had stolen from someone else because she couldn't confront her husband or live with the consequences of something she had agreed to do with him. I left immediately after she told me that there was nothing I wished to tell her other than I hate you and thank you for ruining my life. And I knew that saying that would neither be mature nor fair. I didn't want to let my inner wounded child speak for me, so I just walked away from her and cried out silently to myself. I genuinely felt as though my world had finally crumbled and collapsed. There were so many inaccuracies in what I considered pillars for my personality. The reasons I took pride in being strong turned out to be unnecessary struggles. Basically, my strength and resilience resulted from an act of crime. That thought was more than enough to spiral me down a rabbit hole of questioning almost everything. I don't really know if I want my mother to be back in my life anymore. I don't really know if I want to go out and try to seek the mother who birthed me. The day I was replaced with another sick child at the hospital. I don't know if my birth parents are good people or if my life would have been any different had I stayed with them. I don't even know if I want to feel any different about the fact that I always despised my parents for not loving me, if it just came from the fact that they knew I was never their own child. I can't help but imagine how things could have been or what could have been different. But at the end of the day, I know that what was meant to happen happened, and that the sister I left at home that day was my sister bound to me by blood, heart, and soul, and there was nothing or no event that anyone could do which would change that. And from that moment on, my sister was the only family I would have. And with that truth, I will live the rest of my life happy and content with whatever life throws at me. Next story. My wife and I have been married for 5 years, and she has a 17-year-old son from a previous relationship. The father left her and her son about a decade ago and has not been present in their lives ever since. I know it was a traumatic experience for both of them, and they have been very tight bond as a result. My wife is on permanent disability and doesn't work, so I'm the sole breadwinner in the household. I've always tried to be a very present figure in my stepson's life, but I also understand that I'm not his father. For the past 3 years or so, her son has been having a lot of behavioral issues. When it started, my wife and I thought it was typical teenager acting out type stuff. But when his behavior continued over the course of months and into a year, we knew we had to take more action. We attended family therapy, got him individual therapy and counseling, worked with his school counselor, tried getting him involved in extracurricular activities, etc. We put a lot of time, effort, and money into as many ideas as we could think of, hoping that something would click. But nothing has worked. His grades in school are nearly failing, and he is at risk of not graduating next year. He will refuse to leave his home for days at a time. He has zero respect for me as a person, let alone a parent figure. He fights us on attending therapy and counseling sessions and will not participate when we get him there. I'm at my wit's end, and I'm also starting to feel the hurt financially because my insurance doesn't cover all of the therapy and counseling. My wife's disability checks take some of the edge off, but I'm hemorrhaging money at this point and falling behind on bills. My stepson turns 18 in a couple months, and I'm at a point where I want to stop paying for his therapy and counseling. I'm also at a point where I no longer want him in my house at the end of next school year. After a recent outburst from him, I broke down to my wife and told her all of this. She was unaware of the financial problems because I didn't want her to feel that her son is a burden on us. But as hard as it is to say it, he kind of is. Out of anger and frustration, I told my wife my feelings about wanting him to leave our house, and she flipped out on me. She accused me of giving up on him and basically being okay with him being homeless. She said she would never forgive me if I abandoned him like his father did, and that I was an a-hole for even thinking about something like that, let alone telling her. It's been a huge rift between us since then, and it's put a huge damper on the holidays. A part of me wants to get this all out in the open since I think my stepson deserves to know what kind of strain this is putting on all of us. But my wife insists on being protective of him. I feel like no matter what, I'm going to be the bad guy. But I also feel like I have done all that I can do. Am I the a-hole for wanting to quit supporting my stepson? Not the a-hole. You're doing everything you can to help your stepson. Unfortunately, you cannot help someone who doesn't want to be helped. While he's a minor and you have the authority to do so, have you considered inpatient help? I would suggest being honest with him. His behavior is unacceptable and he either changes or leaves. You will pay for his therapy as long as he tries to help himself get better. This may cost you your marriage, but if you do not draw this line, you will be having the same conversation in 10 years. You're the a-hole if you don't get on the same page with your wife about when you can reasonably decide enough is enough and things are not going to improve no matter what you do, or if there even is a point at which that's going to matter to her, at which point the problem becomes entirely between the two of you. You're the a-hole if you don't loop the therapists in on what you're thinking to get their input on how to impose consequences and limitations without setting the kid up for a certain failure. Also couldn't hurt to see if they've got some payment assistance options you're not aware of. And you're the a-hole if you don't, most importantly, lay out for the kid what you need to see from him, what a realistic timeline for that looks like, and what the consequences will be beyond that point. It's possible he'll hear all that and just decide to leave on his own, but you can't really tell him you've got 2 months to figure your life out and expect that to work, let alone cut him off from the only thing that stands a chance of correcting the behavior, and you don't get to completely wash your hands off him at this point because you're frustrated. Everyone sucks here, but I also think you're mostly not the a-hole. Kicking him out, unless to inpatient treatment, isn't going to solve his problem, only yours. It'll basically be the end of the relationship as well. Your wife has blinders on and is equating getting him inpatient help as abandoning him, and that will be their downfall as well because she'll become his enabler. Your wife being the enabler will drag you down as you are the financial backing of this family. From his point of view, I was working out a lot of trauma I didn't understand as a teen, and my stepfather and mother kicked me out and our relationship never recovered. I haven't actually spoken to her since I was in my mid-20s, almost a decade now. She's dead to me. It's a really complicated situation you're in. Do you want to sink your wife and her son? Could you tell her that as long as he isn't trying to get himself help, you're not going to waste your money and time either? Would you be okay closing the book on these relationships and going out on your own and letting them figure it out? Again, all complicated, no one is going to win. Next story. So my best friend, 31 female Kim, and I, 26 female, have been friends for 7 years. We met in college, and even though she is 5 years older than me, we click super well and talk almost every day. While we get along for the most part, there has been some tension between us these past couple of years, every so often when it comes to relationships. I'm currently married, but Kim has not been in a relationship since high school. Ever since she turned 30, she often complains about how all of her younger friends are either married or in long-term relationships, but she never believes she will find a boyfriend, let alone a husband. Now, Kim is a beautiful woman in my opinion, but she doesn't do much to maintain her appearance on the outside. And I'm not talking about wearing makeup or going to the salon every other weekend because I do not believe that is necessary, but she doesn't really put any effort in at all. Her hair is in bad shape. She has super damaged curly hair, but she doesn't want to cut her hair or treat her damage, so it's just very patchy and breaks off. She has gained weight, but doesn't want to buy bigger clothing to complement her body, so her clothes fit very awkwardly. And then there are other minor things that I feel do not complement her beauty well, but she doesn't care. I offer to take care of her hair when I have time and try to give tips on how to style herself in a way that is comfortable, yet flattering, but she doesn't want to do anything that requires a change from her norm. After a conversation we had about me considering waxing as opposed to shaving my legs, she told me that she would never shave for her husband because he needs to accept her the way she is, and then proceeded to name off all the other things she refuses to do. And when I agree that it is nice to have someone that thinks you're beautiful no matter how you present yourself, it's not very realistic. I told her that she doesn't have to shave for anyone, but physical attraction is a thing. She has every right to present herself the way she wants, but the same way she dismisses guys who have unkempt facial hair or look like they don't take care of themselves, guys can do the same thing. I also said that it's great to meet guys who are solely attracted to us for our personalities, but since she doesn't have much opportunity to interact with guys and she's too shy to make the first move, first impressions can make a big difference. She was so disapproving of what I had to say, but after so long of hearing the complaints from her of never finding a husband and guys approaching other girls before her for so long from such a beautiful woman, I've kind of become apathetic. She told me that it shouldn't be like that, but I told her that if a stranger sees you in public and isn't attracted to you, then he isn't obligated to find out if you have a great personality before going about his day. Edit. To clarify, I'm talking about attraction, not love. Not the a-hole. We can whine and moan all day about how life isn't fair and how men should love us even when we have potato chip crumbs in our hair and sweat in our folds and stains on our clothes. But at the end of the day, that's a selfish mentality. Women now have the ability to live without a man, which means we get to choose how to dress and how to take care of our hair and whether or not to shave. We don't need to worry about keeping a man around to support us. But that doesn't mean we get to live our life without consequences. One of the consequences of being overweight, wearing poorly fitting clothes, and having damaged hair means that men will be less attracted to you physically. Oh well, too bad, so sad. And people who pretend that physical attraction shouldn't matter are so ridiculous it's not even funny. Not the a-hole. I'm not sure I'm understanding her perspective. Does she expect people to be attracted to her regardless of her appearance? Of course, everyone fulfills at least one person's visual preference, so it's about finding the right person, but it makes it much easier if you're clean and somewhat tidy looking. No one is owed physical attraction.